Although I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas, this podcast is not therapy and should not be used as therapeutic intervention. Many of the products and practices mentioned are for educational and informational purposes only. Should you need support, please seek appropriate, qualified, and licensed professionals. Hey y'all, welcome to Between a Hot Mess and a Therapist, the podcast where we navigate the murky waters between what society expects and what it means to truly live, embrace the messiness, the beautiful chaos of life, and celebrating the rebellion in the process. Whether you're a recent graduate, a seasoned therapist, or someone just curious, there's something here for everyone. But before we dive in, make sure you join the Hot Mess Rebellion community where you can connect to other like-minded souls. I'm your host, Shauna Lovin, a seasoned therapist and wellness educator with a very rebellious spirit. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's rebellion. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Between a Hot Mess and a Therapist. Today we're talking about perfectionism. I know this one's a really hard topic to talk about just because it's something I think has been ingrained in us in various ways. It's also, remember when I was talking about work-life balance, I think it became an issue specifically for women just because of some of the things that come behind it, and perfectionism is one of those things where you think we're giving 100% performance 100% of the time, you're giving your A game, but in reality, it's just something that is not achievable. Really, perfectionism is just imposter syndrome. It is a psychological pattern that happens when we doubt ourselves, where we doubt our accomplishments. We are persistent in internalizing the fear that we have, and we feel like we're going to be exposed as a fraud, as someone who doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. I know that I've experienced a lot of that. That is something that has held me back in taking great steps and moving forward and following things that are outside of the box. Y'all know I talk a lot about being outside of the box. Imposter syndrome gives us feelings of self-doubt. We're inadequate. We're, the fear and the shame. And 70% of people experience imposter syndrome. Why we don't talk about this more, I'm not sure. Have you guys heard of Dr. Valerie Young? She has done some work around imposter syndrome, and she's come up with 5 types. I'm not going to get into that today. But again, imposter syndrome really is just perfectionism. We have to learn to let that go. But the thing about perfectionism, it's a catch-22. We feel like we're doing the work and we're putting in the quality, but then we get stuck in this place where we're always doing and trying to make it better than it was before. So I just wanted to kind of go in and talk about what were some of the thoughts that I was having around this. And I think more recently it came up after, the pandemic started, and I was thinking about just this question of what is perfectionism? What does that look like for me in particular? And when I was thinking about this question, I was just at a loss because I didn't know. I thought I was doing all the things that I should be doing without trying to achieve perfectionism, knowing that you can't. But I realized that one morning I was sitting in my house and it was super early in the morning and it was dark in the house. The house was so quiet and still, my kiddos and tiny humans were still snuggled up in their beds. And I was having a cup of coffee and just kind of sitting with my little fur babies, kind of hanging out because everybody else was asleep. And this is the time that I had a moment to just reflect and just kind of be in my space, giving myself permission to kind of be in my head a little bit, because I was trying to answer this question of what is perfectionism. And so what immediately came up for me was these two conversations that I had, I guess, prior to me having this moment. And these people in my life that I had the conversation with have very different roles in my life. So it was very different conversations, very different topics for me at the time. But the funny thing was is that even though these were two different people, they gave me the same message. They gave me the same information. And then it quickly reminded me of my grandmother and something she would say is like, if different people are giving you the same message, then honey, you better listen. And so, I did listen, and I started listening a little bit more. And what was coming up again was perfectionism. Even though all this time in my life and moving through, I never thought that I was really trying to achieve perfectionism. But then as I was sitting back in this moment, I really realized that I was. I kind of felt like this heaviness in my throat. And I thought to myself, that's not me. I don't do perfectionism. Like, again, this was something that I know is not real. It's an unattainable place or thought process. It's perfectionism is just no place for us to achieve it. But yet I'm having these conversations about what does that look like? Perfectionism is likely connected to a core belief. It's often attained, in childhood, as we know, and it's reinforced throughout our life. And so I had to think about, well, what was that core belief? I had to step outside of myself for a moment to really take a rational look at what it was and thought about it a little bit more. And then I realized that I couldn't figure out what that core belief was. But I realized that my perfectionism comes out in slightly different ways than maybe the average person. The context of my perfectionism may not always, have the same feeling as your average, like, person who's in the working world or who's in all these things. It comes up in your home life, it comes up in your marriage, it comes up with your children, your work performance, and attaining or trying to attain material objects. Mine tends to show up when I put expectations and pressures on myself to be a perfect mother, to be a perfect wife, to be or have a perfect household, or to be a perfect employee. And while trying to get it all done, you can't. And I realized that when the plans that I have put in place doesn't provide adequate time and space or the materials, or you just get stuck or you're overwhelmed or even just frankly depressed. I mean, how are you going to achieve perfectionism? Because again, it's not a real place. So when this happens and when I feel like I'm in the place of perfectionism, I don't do anything at all. I kind of freeze because I'm so overwhelmed with all the thoughts and all the things that are happening. I get stuck. And I think this is what has kept me from stepping outside of the box in my own space and in like my private practice and trying to do the things that I want to do for myself. I have to remind myself that we're never going to achieve this place of perfectionism. Even if you try on your best day, you are never going to achieve it. You'll find yourself in way more distress than you actually probably caused yourself. So the way that we can work through this is, again, letting go. It's letting go of the unrealistic expectations, chunking down our goals, our task into bite-sized pieces, and then just doing it. It's just stepping out there and just doing it. Outside of ourselves, who really cares that it's not perfect? Nobody does. It doesn't even look perfect. Like, it's better to just be messy and get it done than to try to have everything in order. It really matters that you did it and that you gave your 100% best. You just did your best. So I bring this up today just to say the next time that you try a new goal, a new task, or something you've been doing, make sure you learn from your mistakes. We're not ruminating on the mistakes that we made, and we're focusing on being better the next time. This is just really progress over perfection. I hope y'all have a great day. Thanks for joining today's rebellion with me. Remember, it's okay to be a hot mess sometimes. It's all part of the journey. Until next time, stay rebellious, stay authentic, and keep embracing the beautiful messiness of life. Don't forget to join the Hot Mess Rebellion community where you can connect with other like-minded souls. And anything mentioned in today's episode will be linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe, you share with a friend, you leave a review, and you keep coming back for more. This podcast was brought to you by Healing Roots Wellness and Botanicals. For more information, please visit healingrootswab.com.